Heal this guy up a lot. Big damage on this rep pally. Oh my god. Oh my god. Augmentation Evoker has taken the ladder by storm. This spec has extremely powerful damage and team support capabilities. In this video, I'll be going over how to play it both offensively and defensively, talents, gearing, and much more. The spec right now has been out for, what is it? It's Saturday. It's been out for like 5 days, something like that. A lot of people have played it. I played with it a good amount. I've played against it a good amount, and I've played as it a good amount. So I feel like I have an overall pretty good perspective on the spec. One remark that people have made is like augmentation is really boring to watch. Augmentation is really, really boring to watch. Now, what I would say is, I don't know if that's true. I don't watch people play Augmentation Evoker, so I'm not sure, but it is a bit of a slower pace. Basically, the way the class works is you're trying to maintain these buffs, right? You're maintaining buffs on your team, you're maintaining buffs on yourself. During like the downtime, you're keeping your team alive. So you have more of like a supportive role. You're going for healers, you're trying to maintain the buffs. And then every once in a while, when you actually have your empower spells, like Upheaval, like Fire Breath, like Breath of Eons, that's when you can actually get like really, really aggressive in the match, and it's going to feel fun and feels like you can get a lot done offensively. So if you like that kind of playstyle where every once in a while you have really big bursts you can contribute, your damage, your consistent damage is, it's okay, but you're making your team do more consistent damage, but you're also keeping your team alive. So you have a supportive role with interrupt and crowd control and off heals and shields, and it could be really, really effective. The pros of the spec: you buff your team to do a lot of damage, you have really good burst, you have good crowd control, you have good utility. The only con of augmentation is short range. You have short range and you do really low consistent damage. But even that, sometimes your consistent damage isn't even that bad, to be honest with you. I would say most augmentation games as well, not all of them, but a lot of augmentation games tend to be a bit longer. It doesn't necessarily mean that all games are long, but it's not like a lot of the time you're playing to out attrition people, you know? The main thing you want to do is keep up Ebon Might. Ebon Might is like, it's your bread and butter. It's the most important thing. So Ebon Might is basically a buff that you give your teammates as well as yourself, and increases your damage done. So it increases your damage done and increases main stat for your team. Very, very important. So your healer will heal more, and the DPS on your team will also do more damage. So very, very important buff. With the PvP talent, Born in Flame, every single time you Ebon Might, you get instant living flames, and you can use those living flames offensively. You can use them defensively if you want, but it's just an important thing to remember. Your biggest damage abilities are going to be Upheaval and Fire Breath. So these empowered spells. Basically, what I think is that you want to kind of combo those together. They're also the things that extend Ebon Might the most. So you want to definitely pair those together. Like, yeah, you don't want to just kind of like randomly send an Upheaval, randomly send a Fire Breath. You want to make sure that you have Ebon Might up before you're sending those to actually, send like good damage. I think it's a mistake that a lot of people make is they'll just, randomly send an Upheaval by itself. And it does decent damage, but it's a long cooldown and it's not ideal for your actual win condition, which is like bursting people down, So you don't want to do that. We'll just talk about offense actually. So you want to keep Ebon Might up. Once you have Ebon Might up, casting Eruption is going to extend the duration of it. So you want to make sure you're getting out as much eruptions as possible. You want to use your Fire Breath. That's going to extend the duration as well. You want to use your Upheaval. That's going to extend the duration as well. Your Essence Burst procs, you can continue to just cast Eruptions. And you want to keep that buff up for as long as you possibly can, because it's going to not only buff yourself, but it's also going to buff your teammates. So that's like the most important thing. You have another buff called Prescience, or I like to call it Prescience. Some people don't even play with it, but I do like it. So basically, it's a 12-second cooldown that doesn't cost anything. It's just an instant that doesn't cost anything. You just press it every 12 seconds or whenever you want to do damage. That also gives you an opportunity to get Essence Burst. So you're basically, your normal burst rotation is going to be something like you get your Ebon Might up. If you have, your Breath of the Eons, you can send it. You can pre-science, send your Breath of the Eons, go for Eruption, tip the scales, Fire Breath, Living Flame, and then you're just going to spam out as many eruptions as you can. You can weave in more instant cast Living Flames. If you have the talent for it, It's called Plot of the Future. When you use your Breath of Eons, it actually grants you Fury of the Aspects, which is Bloodlust. So just remember that when you use your Breath of Eons, it's gonna give you Bloodlust. So that's your time to like get the most done. That's like your big go. Okay, so that's your big go. After you send your burst, you can actually use time skip. So I'll send you another kind of burst. Once again, I'll Ebon Might, I'll pre-science, I'll go for an upheaval, living flame, fire breath, going for eruption spam, eruption spam, eruption spam, just do as many as I can. And then I'm going to use time skip, which is very similar to like shifting power for a mage. And as you can see, all my cooldowns are back now. So I can actually go into another Ebon Might, another upheaval, another fire breath, and spam out more and more and more. So it's really, really good. You want to make sure that you use like your little burst combo, use some of your utility before you use your time skip, which is essentially like your shifting power. Okay? That's your burst. Like that if you're doing that consistently, like you're going in, you're getting your Ebon Might up, you're getting an upheaval, you're getting a fire breath, you're getting eruption spam, that's going to be a good way that you actually contribute to damage, okay? And then remember, you have your instant cast Living Flames. You can make weak auras for that. So that's kind of your main offense. Another thing that I feel like is probably worth mentioning is interrupts. So another mistake that I see from augmentation evokers a lot is they only cast eruption. So they only cast eruption, they only cast during their burst. You actually have a free you have some free spells you can use, believe it or not, like Sleepwalk. Sleepwalk, which is crowd control, which is very strong, is something you should be using very often. You should be looking to use Sleepwalk on the healer. You should be looking to use Sleepwalk on DPS. And because if you land it, not only do you get crowd control, which is good offensively and defensively, of course, but if you get interrupted, you don't care. It doesn't matter. Get interrupted. That's great. Because if you get kicked, then you can just do whatever you want. You can spam cast an eruption. It's also good to cast out Living Flame sometimes, as it just, baits out interrupts. If you get kicked on eruption or you get kicked on upheaval, you're a sad panda. Can't really do too much. So that's kind of the offensive rotation in a nutshell. Now we can go over your defense. So defensively, and we'll go over all the talents as well with different talent options. Defensively, you have a lot. So first of all, the thing that's specific to this class is you have like a Thorns bonus armor / shield called Blistering Scales. That's very strong. So you can use this as an absorb for your teammate and an absorb for yourself. And that's going to be really, really potent. Other really important healing spells is going to be your Verdant Embrace. That's like kind of your main heal. So you want to make sure that you're actually utilizing your Verdant Embrace. If you have the Honor talent, Dream Walker's Embrace, you can use that as well, and it's going to create this little tether. I can show you. It's going to create a little tether. A lot of evokers don't use this, but I do think it's pretty nice in certain matchups. This tether actually does a considerable amount of damage. So not only does it speed boost, it also does like a good chunk of damage to anybody that's in it. So if you want to like dive a team with your melee, you can use that. So yeah, just remember your Verdant Embrace, remember your Blistering Scales, remember your Living Flames, especially your instant Living Flames. Remember, if you Ebon Might, you get instant Living Flames, and you can use those on your teammates as heals, which is really good. You also have Rescue, which is another really important one. You can rescue people behind the pillar. Can't do it on this guy. In terms of your own defense, you have a few things. You have Renewing Blaze, which I like to play with. Some people don't like it. I love it. Basically, before I do anything offensively, if a team even looks at me, even if I'm 90% health, I just pre-pop Renewing Blaze. And that gives you a little bit of a buffer where if they do attack you, you're going to heal that damage back. And then if you feel like you're going to take even more damage, that's not going to be enough, you can use your Obsidian Scales. So you have your Obsidian Scales, you have your Renewing Blaze, which are really important. That's like your main wall. And then, of course, your Blistering Scales. And then you have good self-healing with Verdant Embrace and your Living Flame / instant Living Flames that you can use. Another thing to keep in mind if you have the right talent is after you use an instant cast Verdant, you can actually cast Living Flames on yourself. So that's like your kind of defensive kit and a rotation. So there are options within the tree that you can go. And I'll tell you what I've seen people do. I'm not going to go over every little thing here, but the options and some flexibilities in the tree that you can pick up is the offensive tree. You can go for Inner Radiance, or in your augmentation tree, you can go for Inner Radiance. So if they don't have any kicks or they don't have any spells they're casting often, or you don't care about interrupting, instead of going the short cooldown on interrupt, you can go for Inner Radiance, which gives you more healing. Your Emerald Blossom and Living Flame heals more. Okay. The other things that you can mix around in the tree, you can get Wyrmstone. I don't really get it for solo shuffle because, first of all, I feel like people don't use it very well. Maybe eventually they will, but it takes a long time to get up. It's kind of annoying. You can't buff it in the starter zone. I definitely recommend it for 3s and 2s, but for solo shuffle, I don't spec it. So this is something that you could pick up if you wanted to. This is another optional one, Aspect's Favor. A lot of people do not run this, but I think it's pretty strong. So you have 2 stances, basically, an increased move speed stance for you and your team, and then a max health stance. And with Aspect's Favor, depending on what stance you're in, you get some bonuses. So if you are playing like Bronze Attunement, which is the speed, and you hover, you move really, really fast at the beginning for an extra 4 seconds. So you're just a jet engine. If you're in the Black Attunement and you use your Obsidian Scales, it's going to give you bonus health. So you get an extra 12% health, which can be helpful. I don't really swap stances very much, and for the most part, I find myself just sitting in the speed boost. So that's what I use. But I like the extra speed on it. There's also a stun. I guess I should show the stun. There's a stun called Seismic Slam offensively. This is another thing I guess I'll just show really quick. So Seismic Slam is an interesting one. It's an AoE stun. And basically the way it works is when you upheaval, which is like your one of your main attacks that empower, the upheaval that sends everybody up in the air. If you use a landslide right after it, it'll stun everybody. So you can knock people in the air and then you stun them by dragging them to the ground. It doesn't work on target dummies, but basically you knock them up in the air and then they get slammed and stunned if you combo it with a landslide. So that is an option too if you want to stun. That's something you can definitely pick up. There is a playstyle. A lot of high-rated evokers like the playstyle of playing this. So you play Symbiotic Bloom. Okay? So you play Symbiotic Bloom and Dream of Spring. And basically what this does, you read the talents. Symbiotic Bloom is an increase on your Emerald Blossom healing. So when you use Emerald Blossom, it increases the healing on your team. And Dream of Spring is basically you can use your heal, this Emerald Blossom, as a rotational to heal more and also extend your Ebon Might. So if you're a dampener, you can go for that. I personally just prefer doing more damage, so I just ignore that entirely. I like spamming Eruption. I feel like it feels good. The damage isn't bad. So my personal preference so far has been just using Eruption a lot more often instead of the healing for more damage. So you can make that judgment call if you want more healing. I know players like Trill and Chun-Li, they like playing this, but it's not for me, so I'm not playing it. You have Time Skip, which is this thing that kind of resets your cooldown, so I'll show you. Ebon Might. And you can send some burst. Then you can reset it with Time Skip, which is really cool. It resets all your cooldowns. You could, if you wanted to, play Interwoven Threads, which just basically gives you constant cooldown reduction, but I don't think it's as good. I played with this a while. I really don't think it's as good. And the reason why I don't think it's as good is because I feel like you have specific burst windows as augmentation, and getting those specific burst windows up more often is really strong. So I would not get that. This is another one. People don't like Prescience. I do like it. That's this thing that like buffs 3% crit to your team, but you also have a 35% chance to get an Essence Burst every time you use it. It doesn't cost you anything to use. So I like giving my teammates the extra 3% crit. I also like just having an instant cast button for when I'm interrupted or I'm moving around that I can buff my teammates' damage even more, which is nice to me. I think rotationally it feels good. This is what I'm playing. So yeah, in terms of talents, this is it. We have the stun, obviously, on Breath of Eons. We have Time Spiral, which is something that some people don't pick up, but I really like it. You can get like some more passive things in the tree if you want, like more healing done, essence regeneration, magic damage reduced, but for the most part, this is the build that I like. And I like Time Spiral, which is basically, it's an extra keybind, but it resets the movement. So you can see right now I have no hovers. If I Time Spiral, it gives me another hover. So it's like a get out of jail free card that you can rotate within the match. It's not that long of a cooldown. You can also use it to reset your teammates, like blinks and stuff like that, which is really, really strong. Okay, so most effective PvP talents. You have divide and conquer. I'll tell you like the bread and butter. So first of all, everyone plays Born in Flame. It makes it so you get 3 burnout procs, which is the instant living flame. It's very good. When you Ebon Might, you basically get 3 free living flames, which is good for damage and healing. So this is like kind of your bread and butter. I also think Scouring Flame is really good. You can drop it, but I really like the offensive purge. When you go for your one shot and you're using Tip the Scales for a fire breath, being able to like purge them is really, really strong. Another one is Dream Projection. So as augmentation, you actually get Dream Projection. So you can use Dream Projection to free your healer from crowd control and dispel your team. So it's a really, really fun ability. Once you get used to it, you just press it and then press 2 to activate it. So this is like a good defensive one. It's strong against mages, and it can be strong against like Affliction Warlock and stuff like that. You can use Nullifying Shroud. For me, I like Scouring Flame. I like Born in Flame. And then this last one is kind of my flex talent. I go between Dream Projection against melee cleaves that are just training me down. Unburdened Flight is actually really good. It's like a freedom you can use. So against like DK Warrior, if they're just running you down the whole game, Unburdened Flight is an absolute godsend because you can't be snared during your hover. So hover basically makes it so you completely live. So please keep that in mind. Against Caster Cleaves, you could use Obsidian Metal to avoid interrupts. So you can actually like offensively pop your Obsidian Scales, so you can make sure that you can get your cast off and stuff like that. So if you want to go for like your Ebon Might, if you're getting shut down a lot and interrupted a lot, you can go for, you know, your Ebon Might, Upheaval, Fire Breath offensively with an Obsidian Scales and be immune to interrupts. So that's like some cool utility that you can use. I think Spammable Sleep is good. You know, I really do think that Augmentation has some sick PvP talents. Time Stopped could also be useful. I feel like literally every talent could be useful. So just experiment, see what you like. Make sure you read them all. And then, yeah. I mean, the spec's only been out for 5 days, but I would say Born in Flame and then obviously the Offensive Scouring Flame are my favorites. But yeah, other than that, there's a ton of utility that you can use. So definitely make sure to experiment. Another quick one that I thought is worth mentioning, I didn't mention in the talent tree, but Source of Magic. So this is a talent that I like playing, and it's super free. Basically, it's a buff that you put on your healer. The end. When you get in a game, just put the buff on the healer, and then forget about it. And basically what it does is it gives them mana returned. Every single time you use an empowered spell, they get a little bit of mana back. It's not that crazy, but it also gives them 3% healing and damage, which is really strong. So if you want to buff your healer, you want the game to go even longer, you can use Source of Magic. So just really, 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 really free. I guess it's worth talking about gearing. I do think that mastery is strong. My mastery is a little bit on the low end. So I think your main stats are going to be obviously versatility. You want a good amount of versatility, a good amount of mastery, which I think most people stack. So mastery, versatility, and then haste will be your next one. And I like playing a little bit of haste because augmentation evokers, they cast a lot. Like you actually cast a lot as an augmentation evoker. So I think it's worth, you know, having some haste to actually get off your casts, and not just going entirely 100% mastery, because if you're just getting locked out on everything you do, it's not going to be, you know, the most beneficial. So I do think mastery is important. Obviously versatility is important for all things PvP, but weaving in a little bit of haste is fine. Is what I do. I kind of mix mastery and haste. I think a lot of evokers, they like just going full on mastery, but you can make that judgment call yourself. Is tier worth using? So tier is actually bugged, I think. When you're in PvP combat, it's bugged and it shows, or when you're in arena, it's bugged and it shows that it doesn't actually do anything, but it does. So Ebon Might increases the damage of your empower spells by 30%. That's 15%. And Ebon Might increases your ally's primary stat. It does work. So they get an extra 0.5% primary stat, and they also, you get 15% on your empowered spells. And I personally feel like it's worth it. Like those are 15% damage on your fire breath, and upheaval is 100% noticeable. So I would, at the very least, use the 2 set, but I'm using the 4 set. And I don't think the stats on the gear are actually that bad. Like you have haste versatility, crit mastery. Maybe crit's not the most ideal, but a little bit of crit's not that bad. Versatility mastery and haste mastery. So the tier gear is good. I opted to go for the gloves, the pants, the chest, and the shoulders. And as you can see in my gear, I'm gemming mastery haste. I just want a good mix here. For gearing, one more thing that's worth noting is the embellishments. I think that precog is amazing. You cast a lot, you fake an interrupt, getting precog, make you immune to crowd control, really strong. I'll play precog on this all freaking day. And then the other embellishment that I have is this one. Successfully applying a loss of control effect to an enemy, erupting an enemy, or dispelling any target increases your primary stat. So that's what I use. I use the primary stat and precog. So yeah, that's pretty much it. If you guys have any questions, feel free to let me know. I'll be happy to answer them. And like I said, the spec just came out, so this guide I'm sure will be a little bit dated and, you know, yeah, a month, 2 months if they make any changes. But overall, I think the spec is really fun. Like I said, people hate on this spec. They think it's boring. They think it's a tank spec. I think it does have too much healing, but there is a world where a support spec like this can exist. I think I'd like to see it a little bit better in terms of its own damage. It's cool that it buffs your teams. What I would like to see is basically like Living Flame, potentially Eruption getting some PvP buffs, and Living Flame getting some PvP buffs. Because I do think like Upheaval and Fire Breath already one-shot, but if they wanted to actually make the spec feel a little bit better, they could buff, you know, Eruption. It does very shit damage. So you make that a little bit better, and then they could nerf some of the healing. So if I was in charge, what I would do, I would nerf some of the healing. Like I would nerf Blistering Scales healing. And then I would buff the damage of Living Flame and Eruption a little bit so you can contribute more offensively. Is it viable in PvP? Not only is it viable, but I would put it at like S tier right now in the meta. It's very strong.